Namaste. It's the Noni Snowflake here, still on the Shinto's yoga experience, riding the waves. The energies are speeding up, we're feeling it. So we're riding the waves with our heart of what we want and need to do for when Mercury goes into retrograde with the Leo full moon. Retrogrades are a time where we reflect back to previous energies and we go inwards. And Mercury is the planet of expression, the mind, communication, and our Mercury is Pisces. The power of neurodiversity, unleashing the advantages of your differently wired brain, by Thomas Armstrong, PhD, author of 7 Kinds of Smart. Parents, teachers, and policy makers should all read this thought-provoking book. I loved it. Taito! Temple Grandin, author of Thinking in Pictures. Oh, yeah, you like the sound of that book, don't you? Temple Grandin is the lady we watched that we learnt about autistic people. Oh, I'm not sure about policy correct, but you know, we are. So it's not like we're doing wrong by anyone. We're just developing our language skills. Want to connect, want to be hugged, want to be touched, but they can't by other people due to the energy dynamics that current collective consciousness dwell in and reside in. The duality of the black and white, the 3D dimension. But she discovered that if you go into a cattle shed, you know, where you got the cows that line up in all those metal things and then they get squeezed. She discovered that it's really good in there. It did look really good, to be fair. We used to sleep in the bathroom when we were younger, and a lot of small spaces, probably for that reason. Neurodiversity, a new term that changes the way we think about neurological disorders. Neurodiversity, the right word at the right time to account for recent evidence from brain science, evolutionary psychology, and other fields suggesting that we pay close attention to the bright spots of promise and possibility appearing in people who are differently wired. Celebrated educator and psychologist Thomas Armstrong offers a revolutionary, inspiring guide illuminating critical information such as what recent research says about the specific strengths found in people with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and other mental health diagnoses. How to construct the ideal environmental niche for a neurodiverse person. How to take advantage of assistive technologies and what's to come in the future. Which career paths emphasize the gifts of neurodiverse adults? Why inclusive classrooms offer the best learning experience for neurodiverse children? A passionate, compassionate, and practical look at the myriad strengths of anyone who is differently abled. The power of neurodiversity is essential reading for parents, educators, mental health professionals, and anyone intrigued by how our brains work and what secrets they hold. A major work, revolutionary and humane, drawing on the latest scientific evidence, Dr. Armstrong argues convincingly that the disease-based model needs to be replaced by an understanding of brain differences that characterize neuropsychological conditions. This book could not be more timely. From Michelle Borba, EDD, educational psychologist and author of the Big Book of Parenting Solutions. Thomas Armstrong, PhD, is an award-winning author and speaker who has written 14 books, including 7 Kinds of Smart and Multiple Intelligences in the Classroom. Dr. Armstrong has also written for many periodicals, including Parenting, Ladies' Home Journal, and Family Circle, and has appeared on Today, CNN, and the BBC. He lives in Northern California. His website is thomasarmstrong.com, ThomasArmstrong.com. Praise in there. This quietly spoken book is at its strongest when examining the ideology itself and outlining the arguments in its favour. It is sensible in examining how other cultures, past and present, have accepted forms of neurodiversity, and it is wise in its critique of the use of normative standardizations to identify objects in education and society in general. And that was the Times Higher Education Supplement. And from Library Journal, Armstrong uses neurodiversity to encompass a new way of thinking about a variety of disabilities by focusing on their potential benefits rather than their problems, useful and uplifting. Publishers Weekly. Armstrong argues that there is no normal brain or normal mental capability, and that we are making a serious mistake in assuming that the kinds of differences we see in people with conditions like autism or dyslexia involve only deficits. People with these conditions also have strengths, he emphasises, and by focusing on these rather than on the labels, we can find the modes of learning and living that can help them thrive. Kathleen Seudel, creator of NeuroDiversity.com. In this engaging, accessible book, Armstrong offers a thoughtful consideration of cognitive diversity and many practical suggestions for maximising the potential of and increasing respect for those who are differently brained. And then Ari Neaman, president of the Autism Self-Advocacy Network. An engaging and provocative look into the emerging societal conversation about neurological diversity. Our country has adapted to many new ideas over the last century. Acceptance of the broad scope of neurodiversity represents the next step forward. Contents. Forward to the paperback edition. Preface. 1. Neurodiversity, a concept whose time has come. 2. The joy of the hyperactive brain. 3. The positive side of being autistic. 4. A different kind of learner. 5. The gift of mood. 6. The advantages of anxiety. 7. The rainbow of intelligences. 8. Hello, sunshine. We love you. 8. Thinking in a different key. 9. Neurodiversity in the classroom. 10. The future of neurodiversity. Resources, notes, index. Forward to the paperback edition. We've eaten, we've been good girl. Shh. But we put the water on the other hob thing. But we didn't. We just turned up the porridge and we almost burnt it. But we did burn a bit of it. Shh. Nuts and blueberries. Okay, thank you for sharing. As the paperback edition of The Power of Neurodiversity goes to press, we are witnessing the expansion of what I've called in the book Our Culture of Disabilities. Currently, the newest version of the Psychiatrist's Bible, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM-5, is being prepared for publication in 2013. This manual, which influences not only psychiatrists, but also mental health professionals, the legal profession, and the field of education, threatens to add new categories of disorder to its already long list of mental disorders. It must be even more massive now. That's 7 years ago. Among the manual's sharpest critics is Dr. Alan Francis, who chaired the task force that prepared the previous version, the DSM-4. Francis contends that normality is an endangered species with this new version, and that the DSM-5 will probably create millions of new diagnoses by including such proposed disorders as psychosis risk syndrome, minor neurocognitive disorder, binge eating disorder, and temper dysfunctional disorder with dysphoria. Alan contends that pharmaceutical companies are likely to welcome these new illnesses into its fold. It's Psychiatric Times, he writes. In Psychiatric Times, he writes, there would be massive overtreatment with medications that are unnecessary, expensive, and often quite harmful. At the same time, however, there are positive developments in the emerging field of neurodiversity that can hopefully counter at least some of the negative influences of our disability culture. Politically, we've seen the appointment by President Obama of a key neurodiversity advocate, Ari Ne'eman, apologies for pronunciation, to the National Council of Disability, which advises the President and Congress on matters concerning disability. Ne'eman, who himself has Asperger's syndrome, is an autism rights activist who believes that autism is a neurological difference that should be respected, not a disease to be cured. On the technological front, there has been a vast expansion in the past 2 years of new applications for such devices as the iPhone and the iPad, apps that can assist neurodiverse individuals in creating positive niches for themselves. One mother of a 13-year-old with Down syndrome was interviewed in great schools and observed that, as much as he struggles with reading, Aidan's a wizard with the iPhone. He picked up his uncle's iPhone one day and without any telling him how to use it, he found and figured out every game app on it. And there were a lot. The touch screen and the apps are intuitive to him in a way that a keyboard is not. Finally, there is an aesthetic dimension to neurodiversity that is being explored by such artists as Ali Hosseini, a renowned artist, philosopher, and media expert, who is developing a video installation entitled Neurodiversity, the Autism Project, which will seek to simulate many of the sensory experiences of autism. Awesome! So that neurotypical individuals can begin to understand the world in which the neurodiverse lives. In these positive developments, we can begin to make out a subtle but significant shift in how mental disabilities are viewed. And there is room for optimism and neurodiversity. And there is room for optimism that neurodiversity will continue to grow as a concept, change attitudes concerning mental illness, and ultimately improve the lives of those who are differently wired. Preface. While working as an educational consultant, I used to go into schools and meet with parents, teachers, and specialists at Individual Educational Plan, IEP, meetings concerning specific difficult students. Before each meeting, I would ask to have a copy made of the child's cumulative file, consisting of grades, reports, tests, and other official papers extending back into kindergarten. Shiver me tingles! I'd take a yellow marker as I read through the file and highlight anything positive about the student, including comments, e.g., a kindergarten teacher's notes, loves to finger paint. High grades or test scores, e.g., high score on the object assembly subtest of the Welsh Intelligence Scale for Children, and anything else that seemed promising. Then I'd type all the positive material together on 2 or 3 pages, often distilled from 100 or more pages, and hand it out to the meeting. First, I'd noticed that many adults at the meeting would express surprise at the number of positive things said about a student who was so troubled and/or troubling to others. Second, I'd start hearing comments like, "Now that you mention it, he does have a flair for drawing," or "It's true, he really is a hands-on learner." Typically, IEP meetings would tend to dwell on the child's negative attributes, and a dark cloud would hover over the group. However, I discovered that when the meeting started with people talking about the student's positive assets, this often opened things up to a broader discussion of the children's true potentials, and often some real solutions to helping them would be generated in the course of the meeting. This little exercise of mine points to something more significant about the true nature of people who struggle with labels like ADHD, autism, and dyslexia, both inside and outside of school. Too often, the 7 labels that I take up in the course of this book, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and schizophrenia, attract negative thoughts and attributions from professionals, family, and others, and these individuals go through their lives saddled with low expectations. However, once we start to look more deeply into their lives, we begin to see strengths, talents, abilities, and intelligences shine through. This process of investigating the positive dimensions of people with negative labels can make a world of difference in helping them achieve success in life. It's because this work is so important that I am convinced we need to reject the disease-based thinking that too often dogs the lives of labelled individuals and embrace a more positive version, a more positive vibration, a more positive vision of who they are and who they can become. The word neurodiversity conveys this sense of affirmation. Just as we use the terms cultural diversity and biodiversity to refer to the rich variety of social heritage or biological life, we need a term that conveys a sense of the richness of different kinds of brains, coined by autism advocate Judy Singer. Neurodiversity is just the right word at the right time to account for recent evidence from brain science, evolutionary psychology, and other fields that suggests that amid the damage and dysfunction appearing in the brains of people with mental health labels, there are bright, shining spots of promise and possibility. Rather than viewing people with dyslexia, mood disorders, ADHD, or autism as having broken brains, as some have done, I present strong evidence in this book for extraordinary gifts in those individuals who might to many people seem least likely to possess them. I hope that in the course of this book, you begin to experience a kind of pleasant surprise at the number of positive things that can be said about people possessing each of these 7 conditions. I'd also like this book to encourage dialogue about the hidden strengths of people in our own lives who have one or more of these 7 conditions. E.g., now that you mention it, my uncle has autism, but is a mechanical genius. Finally, I'd like to open up a broader discussion about the meaning of human diversity as it relates to the brain. Up until now, we've tended to use heavily negative, medicalized language to speak of brain diversity, but generally positive, naturalistic language to talk about cultural diversity and biodiversity. For the sake of our well-being and health as a society and culture as a whole, it's essential that we start using more positive language to talk about the brain in its many variations. This relatively new term, neurodiversity, in use for only the past 10 years, gives us a means of doing that. To be sure, I don't want to slide into polyanism, and have us simply extolling as marvelous anything that the brain conjures up. It is an understatement to say that these 7 conditions bring with them untold suffering for those who have them and for those who are caretakers and loved ones. But we've become one-sided in our disease-based orientation to brain differences and need to spend time exploring the positive side to correct this imbalance. If this process results in some positive solutions being generated to help individuals with these brain differences, then the time spent in writing this book will have been well worth it. The book begins with a chapter that summarizes 8 basic principles about neurodiversity, including the idea of niche construction, which, like a beaver building a dam, provides opportunities for neurodiverse individuals to create suitable lifestyles for themselves that seek not so much to fit into the world around them, as to make the world accommodate itself to their needs, styles, and assets. The next 7 chapters take each of the brain conditions listed above in turn and focus on the strengths that I've observed in the literature. Especially interesting to me is the way in which these conditions are regarded in other countries, or might have proved useful in times past, including prehistoric times. This serves to highlight another of my central principles. Hi, Mercury! This serves to highlight another of my central principles from chapter 1. Can you help with our communication and expression, please? Thank you. Whether you are regarded as disabled or gifted depends largely on when and where you were born. I am convinced that not enough attention has been given to the cultural relativity of disability labels, and that there are good reasons why these conditions are still in the gene pool. In each of the 7 chapters, I also examine how to construct niches using assistive technologies, e.g. spell checkers and text-to-speech, software for dyslexics, good carer choices, e.g. the computer field for people with autism, human resources, e.g. a life coach for people with ADHD, and specific strategies, e.g. mindfulness meditation for people with anxiety disorders. In chapter 9, I look at neurodiversity applied to children and education, noting that special education programs up until now have been isolating, stigmatizing experiences for many kids, and that a new type of inclusive neurodiverse classroom, consisting of kids with and without labels, is a more suitable learning environment for all children. Finally, in chapter 10, I write about the future of neurodiversity, examining a business, for example, that hires people with Asperger's syndrome to test computer software because they do a better job than so-called neurotypicals. I also look at the increasing threat that genetic engineering and prenatal screening pose in potentially eliminating neurodiverse people from the planet. An appendix provides a list of helpful books, videos, organisations, and assistive technologies for each of the 7 brain differences covered in this book. I'd like to thank a number of people for helping me with this project. First, my literary agent, João Del Borgo, who is a dream agent, pure and simple. Also, my editor, Renee Sedlia, who has been the in-house shepherd of this book at Da Capo, senior production editor, Siska Schriefel, and copy editor, Annette Wender. I'd like to thank Judy Singer and Harvey Bloom for coming up with the term neurodiversity, and Kathleen Siedel for introducing me to it through her marvellous website, neurodiversity.com. I'd like to thank Oliver Sacks for his book of work on the brain, which makes him, in my estimation, the godfather of neurodiversity. I'd also like to thank my psychiatrist, Dr. R.S.S. Gardner, for helping me with my own mood disorder so that I could finish this book. Despite going through a particularly difficult depressive period during most of its composition. My heart goes out to you, dear lady. Thanks to Sandy and Archie Deeks for keeping it real. Finally, I'd like to thank my wife. My heart goes out to you, dear man. Oh, well, unless you're female and married to a wife. No, you're a man because it's Thomas, isn't it? Finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Barbara Turner, for her love, patience, and understanding while I've been immersed in this project. Chapter 1, Neurodiversity, a concept whose time has come. If you know anyone, if you've been brought to this video and you know anyone or you yourself has any of these labels, please, if you've got something for this or you want to be part of the community to help facilitate change in the systems that's ever so needed, share the video, do whatever. I don't know how all this stuff works, we're learning. But if you can like and share, get these videos to go viral, and do anything you can on this part as well, it'd be much appreciated to these people. We need to change the way that we treat and care for people. And it starts from doing the Gandhi quantum ripple effect. Be the change you want to see in your word. Change the dialogue with your inner world and be compassionate and loving and gentle and patient with yourself. Welcome to what we do to navigate ourselves through all of these labels and what's going on. It's turning out to be called the Shinto yoga experience with Shinto self-empowerment. Balancing, integrating, embedding, aligning, harmonizing all 8 limbs of yoga into every aspect of the being, into every aspect of everyday life. Namaste.